Welcome, my name is Sam Picking. I'd like to present to you today an overview of the consumer electronics industry in relation to logistic concepts. The consumer electronics industry is one of the most dynamic, with products undergoing rapid change leading to endless innovations and new products. There is a continual demand from the consumer, with consumer electronics changing the way people consume entertainment and organize their lives. With the increase in demand globally and the pressure between competitors, there is a need for expansion of the role of supply chain management. This diagram sets out a typical supply chain. One of the largest consumer electronics suppliers, Sony, has a supply chain that reaches across the entire globe. Manufacturing plants are located in Japan, China, South Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, the UK, and Brazil. Here you can see the basic structure of the Sony supply chain. The typical supply chain for the consumer electronics industry commences with material management, with the mining of raw materials, which then leads to production of parts and components. Next step is the procurement by the manufacturer of the parts and components. As an example, a smartphone requires 2,000 different components, from tiny machine screws and capacitors to circuit boards and LCD screens. At the commencement of the physical distribution stage, the components are distributed to the manufacturing plants for assembly. Sony is reducing their environmental impact of logistics by promoting modal shift and utilizing joint delivery and milk runs. In the case of a milk run, a truck will follow a route whereby they collect from several suppliers rather than using separate routes to each supplier, as can be seen in this diagram. Inventory of the finished products is undertaken and distribution is carried out to the warehouses and wholesalers. Finally, the finished products are distributed to the retailers, leading to the purchase by the consumer. As part of Sony's commitment to corporate social responsibility, modal shift is used for distribution of finished products. Modal shift is switching of transport modes from air to sea and from truck to rail to reduce CO2 emissions. In Japan, Sony uses rail particularly for large-sized products such as Bravia LCD TVs. In Brazil, Sony has switched from truck and air to marine transport freight, destined for Sao Paulo, shipped out of the Manias plant of Sony Brazil Limited, as seen in the opposite diagram. Also seen in the opposite diagram is the distribution of finished products in the United States by rail from west to east coast. One of the challenges faced in the consumer electronics industry is demand variability increases as one moves up a supply chain. The demand for finished products is less variable than for sub-assemblies, which is then less variable for individual components. This phenomenon is known as the bullwhip or Forrester effect, as can be seen in this diagram. The customer demand for consumer electronics directly affects the company's inventory. When companies attempt to forecast the demand for consumer electronics, the supply chain from consumer demand to raw material supplies can lead to amplification of variations, which can lead to issues with time, cost, and inventory in supply chain management. A second challenge is with the continual advancements in technology innovations. Many consumer electronics are shrinking in size, however they are increasing in functionality and speed, leading to a shorter product life cycle. This leads to consumer expectations for ever-growing products. The shortened product life cycle is leading to the challenges of demand planning, price, and profit erosion. To address this issue, consumer electronics companies require tools of dedicated inventory management systems to monitor inventory and transaction information. E-waste, or electronical and electrical waste, is an ever-increasing challenge for the consumer electronics industry, with 50 million tons of e-waste each year and only 20% being formally recycled. E-waste represents not only an environmental danger, but also a lost opportunity for suppliers and fulfillment centers, with the value of material estimated at USD $62.5 million. Corporations such as Sony and Philips have both implemented recycling programs and comply with recycling laws and regulations in countries and regions around the world. Sony Green Management 2020 is a quest for zero environmental footprint. Finally, a more recent challenge is this year's pandemic. Sony has reported that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted their supply chain, with governments mandating the closure of their manufacturing plants in China, Malaysia, and Wales. In addition, the lockdowns and closures of retailers around the world have impacted sales. Information technology is vital to a successful logistic chain. To address some of these challenges faced by a consumer electronics industry, the systems summarized in the table presented here are a vital part of the supply chain management. As an example, in the case of a shorter product lifecycle management, information systems and executive information systems are utilized to increase business productivity and reduce service cycles, product development cycles, and marketing life cycles. Thank you for your time today.